So My Hero Academia has a lot of interesting characters, right? But not all of them are in the My Hero 1 Justice series. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're doing another episode of the How They Can Work series. In this series, we look at characters that are not My Hero 1 Justice 2, and we try to break them down to create movesets for them, so hopefully one day they will become a playable character. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Spinner. I don't know why he's not in the game. There are 6 League of Villains members still currently in the anime, and Spinner is still one of them. I don't know why he's not in the game. I feel like he deserves a spot at that point, because think about it. We have Shigaraki, Dabi, Toga, Mr. Compress, and Twice. But in the League of Villains, there are those 5 and Spinner. I feel like Spinner should be in the game to complete the League of Villains. That's just me, but come on, seriously, think about it. Spinner has done so much for the league. He's been there, helping them out and stuff, and I feel like he deserves to be a character, especially because even though some people say he would probably just be an Echo Fighter of Stain, I don't think that's the case, because I think his quirk is different enough to make an interesting moveset. And not to mention, we thought that about Tetsu Tetsu. We thought Tetsu Tetsu was just going to be an Echo Fighter or Kirishima, but that wasn't the case either, and they gave Tetsu Tetsu a fantastic moveset, so I feel like they could do the same for Spinner. And again, I feel like Spinner deserves it, because he's the only League of Villains members that's still currently in the league that isn't in the game yet, and I feel like he deserves a spot, and we're going to try to make a moveset for him. Also, before we begin, I just want to let you guys know that there are some spoilers from the latest season of the My Hero Academia anime, so just in case you haven't caught up or you haven't seen all the episodes, I just wanted to let you know that there are some spoilers just in case you didn't want to be spoiled. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin the video. So in the My Hero 1's Justice series, each character usually has a normal attack, a red attack or an unblockable, a yellow attack or an armor attack, and they also have a quirk 1, a side quirk 1, a quirk 2, and a side quirk 2, and they also have a plus ultra level 1, 2, and 3. But in this series, we don't look at the normal attack because it's usually just the same punch or kick, and we don't look at the plus ultra level 3 because it's just 3 plus ultra level 1s combined into one big attack. So we only look at the unique things in this series. So yeah, that's how the series works. So let's just dive into this moveset. So Spinner's quirk is called Gecko, and it allows him to stick to walls. Yeah, that's basically it. But even though that quirk may not be all that interesting, he makes up for it with his fighting style and his weaponry. And I feel like combining his quirk with his fighting style and his weapons could make for a really interesting moveset, and that's what I tried to do here. So for his quirk 1, I have it labeled Crafty Knife. This is where he throws a knife just like how Stain does it, but instead of throwing 3, he only throws 1 knife. So yeah, it's kind of like Stain's projectile, except instead of throwing 3 knives, it's only 1. And I know what you're thinking. That doesn't sound all that cool, it just sounds like a worse version of Stain's projectile. But actually, what makes it different is the knife stays on the field if he misses. So basically, if the knife misses, it stays on the ground, and when Spinner walks over the knife on the field, he picks it up. Once you have collected 3 knives, he starts an animation where he constructs his massive sword made of swords, which takes a couple of seconds. Once the sword is crafted, Spinner puts it on his back and holds onto it. And basically, now you have this massive iconic sword on Spinner's back. But even though he has the sword now, his quirk 1 stays the same. He just still throws knives and stuff. But a difference is that now that he has the sword, he can't pick up any more and start crafting another sword. Basically, when he throws a knife and it misses, instead of it staying on the ground, it just despawns. So until you get rid of the sword, the knives you can't pick up anymore. So yeah, that is his quirk 1, and I know what you're thinking. What the heck? What are you going to do with the sword now? It's just on his back, but his quirk 1 doesn't change? Let me tell you something. His quirk 1 is kind of just the start of it with the sword, because the sword does change up some of his moves, but not his quirk 1. And we'll get into what the sword changes, his moveset wise and stuff like that. But basically, I'll explain how you get rid of the sword so you can start making more and stuff, and I'll also explain what the sword does later in the moveset. But that is his quirk 1, so it's a great introduction. But before we can get back to his kind of gimmick with his iconic sword and stuff and how it changes some of his moves, we have to talk about his other gimmick, which is in his side quirk 1. And basically for his side quirk 1, I have it labeled Sticks to Landing. This is where he does a slash and then does a backflip over the opponent and slashes at them again, and then he does one more slash as he lands. So basically it's like a backflip with 3 slashes involved. And when Spinner lands, what makes this move interesting is whatever he lands on, he sticks to for a couple of seconds. Meaning he can't be lifted into the air by the opponent, which is good because it prevents him from being hit by an air combo. but in return, what makes it balance is he can't jump for a couple of seconds. So this adds his like quirk into play here because he sticks to whatever he lands on, like his quirk, Gecko. And another thing that makes this quirk special interesting is if he's near a wall during the backflip, he will actually stick to the wall instead of sticking to the ground. And basically that just changes up the animation a little bit. So basically instead of doing like a slash and then jumping over and slashing at them again and then landing on the ground and slashing at them, he would do this instead. He would slash and then slash at them again, land onto the wall, and then throw a knife. So basically it's just 3 hits with backflip involved with it, and I think that's pretty cool. I feel like it has its pros and cons. Basically it prevents you from getting hit by an air combo, but it also stops you from jumping for a couple of seconds. But I feel like it's an interesting gimmick, and I feel like it could be really interesting to see how people use it. And also I feel like the animation for this attack would be pretty cool because it has 2 different ones where if you're nowhere near a wall, you get this one cool animation where he does like a backflip with 3 slashes. But if you are near a wall, you also get a really cool animation where he does 2 slashes and like a knife throw and stuff. And then you're on the wall and you can do whatever you want with that because he's sticking to it for a couple of seconds. And overall, I think it's an interesting side quirk one, and I like how it includes his quirk into it. Like Gecko allows him to stick to anything he wants to, and this one allows him to stick wherever he lands, and I think that'd be a pretty interesting side quirk one. Moving on to his quirk 2, I have it labeled Sword Striking. This is where he uses his sword and basically kind of like rapidly strikes at the opponent, which is just good for combos because it's basically kind of like a rapid jab, so it's really good. But we're moving back into the territory where if you have his iconic sword, it actually changes the move. So if you have his sword made of swords, it will change the attack into basically him taking out that huge sword, and he will lift it into the air and do one big strike downward that will break the sword once the swing is over. And basically if the sword makes contact with the opponent, it will knock the opponent into the ground and will cause a bounce. So basically it would be like one strike downward with the sword, and if it hits the opponent, they will get hit by it, get hit into the ground, and it will cause a bounce so you can follow up after it. But if it hits the opponent, it will break, and yeah, then that's how the sword is broken, and you can go back to trying to craft a new one. Also, if the sword misses but still hits the ground and stuff like that, it still breaks, but it actually shoots out knives in all different directions. So basically, if it hits the opponent, it breaks, but if it doesn't hit the opponent, it still breaks, but it actually shoots out knives. And I think that's a really interesting quirk too, because first off, it has 2 different kind of like attacks in it. For his quirk 2, you have its regular use where it's kind of like good for combos, but the second use, if you have his iconic sword, it's just one big strike that causes a bounce, which does a good amount of damage, but it sacrifices the sword, so you have to craft a whole new one. Also, if you miss it, you also get a bonus because even though it breaks, it shoots out knives, so it kind of like protects you. So that's his quirk 2, and that's like the first move that gets changed by his like iconic sword if you have it. The other attack that kind of gets changed is his side quirk 2, and his side quirk 2 is labeled Sword Slashing. So normally what it would do is he would dash at the opponent and does like kind of like a swift slash with the sword, and that's good to kind of like close the distance, and it's good for combos too because you can follow up after it. But basically how the attack is changed is if you have his iconic sword crafted, he will basically do a slash with it, but he doesn't dash forward. So it changes it up a bit. And also if the sword connects, the opponent gets launched away, so you can't follow up afterwards with a combo. But it'd be a good way to end a combo because it would do good damage. Also, something else is that the sword doesn't break immediately once you use it like his other attack. You get 3 uses out of it before it breaks, and that's what makes it different from the other attack because, again, it doesn't break automatically. You get 3 uses out of the kind of like iconic sword. So that's pretty cool. And a bonus also is if you miss the attack, basically like you do like the slash, and it doesn't connect with the opponent, it actually shoots 3 knives out like how Stain's projectile looks. So you also get a bonus if you miss it, but that does count to one of your 3 slashes you get before it breaks. So yeah, that's his side quirk 2, a really interesting one because normally it's good to kind of like close the distance, but also good for combos. But if you do have his iconic sword, it's good to end a combo, and even if you miss it, you get like a better projectile out of it, and you also get 3 uses out of it instead of 1, but it does eventually break, so you have to craft a new one. So it's kind of like you have to make a decision here, like what do you want to do with the sword before it breaks, and then you have to like run the risk of crafting a new one. But it does good damage, and it changes his attacks in a way to make it interesting because you can come up with new combos with Spinner. And moving on to his red and yellow attack. For his red attack, I have it where he does like the same red move as Stain. And I know that doesn't seem that interesting, but hear me out. Spinner idolizes like Stain. And I feel like giving him one move that is so like just a copy of Stain would be perfect because first off, look at Spinner and look at Stain. He dresses exactly like Stain, like he wants to be like Stain, like he idolizes him. So I feel like giving him like a red attack that is basically the same thing as Stain would be perfect because that fits Spinner's character. Also, they both wear red, you know, Stain and Spinner both wear red, so I feel like making his red attack the similar one would be kind of perfect. And for his yellow attack, I have it where Spinner does a slash with his regular sword. A really basic yellow attack, but also I feel like it'd be perfect for Spinner because he also uses his normal sword, like not his iconic big one, like his just regular small sword. He uses it pretty well, so I feel like giving him a yellow attack that uses his like regular sword instead would be perfect. And I feel like his red and yellow attacks kind of fit him very well, and that's why I made those his red and yellow attacks. Moving on to his level 1. For his level 1, I have it where he would make his sword made of swords at the beginning of the animation. Then he would hit the opponent 3 times with it, with the last hit launching the opponent away and finishing the level 1. And a plus side to the level 1 is he gets to keep the sword, like his iconic sword, after the animation is over. So if you don't have one, you don't have to craft a new one because, you know, he has his sword now, so you don't have to worry about crafting one. And if you already had one, but it had some uses on it, like basically the attack where you get 3 uses before it breaks, if you had like 2 uses on it, then basically it resets that counter back to a fresh kind of like sword. So you basically get like a fresh new sword and stuff. So overall, I think it's a cool level 1 because you get to see him make his sword made of swords in like a different kind of like animation. It's more like close up and stuff, and then you get to see him like attack with it like 3 times, which would be a cool level 1 to see. But also, you get to keep the sword afterwards, so you don't have to worry about crafting a new one, or it basically gives you like a fresh one if you already had one. So overall, I think it's a good level 1, and it's a pretty interesting one as well. So for his level 2 animation, I have it where in the animation, the background is dark like most of the villains in the game. That is important, but basically, the animation would begin with Spinner tightening his like mask on his face, and then he would dash at the opponent, throwing knives at them, and once he closes the distance, he would begin to move around the opponent, striking them with his regular sword, moving in and out of the dark background, which is one of the important reasons why the background has to be dark. Then the camera would cut to Spinner, who would run out of the darkness and would basically do a flip over the opponent, striking them in the back with his sword and knocking them to the ground. And when he lands on the ground, he would crawl back into the darkness, not like walk or run into it. He would like crawl like he was crawling on a wall. And basically the animation would end with basically the camera cutting back to the opponent, who's now trying to get back up after like that strike to the back because Spinner did that backflip, knocking them to the ground with his sword and stuff. And basically as they're trying to get back up, you would see like a flash of light pop up behind them, and then the opponent would like turn their head to see Spinner inside the League of Villains truck as he's driving towards them, and he would ram into them, launching them into the air and ending the level 2. So I think this level 2 is pretty awesome because first off, it uses like the dark background to like the fullest, where like he's like kind of using sneak attacks and kind of like jumping in and out of the darkness, striking them with his like sword and stuff. And then we also get to see his quirk back in action where he crawls back into like the darkness and stuff. I think that would be pretty cool. And also another awesome moment about it is like the League of Villains truck being included, because we see Spinner driving like a lot of League of Villains kind of like vehicles and stuff like that. Like he's kind of like their getaway driver and stuff. And I feel like including that in his level 2 would be pretty awesome. And it also includes the dark background again, because we only see the light of like the truck flash up behind the opponent, and then we just see the truck drive out of the darkness. I think that would be awesome to see as well. And overall, I think it's a cool level 2 for Spinner and just a really cool one to see in the game. That is my moveset for Spinner. Overall, I think it's a pretty cool one, and I feel like Spinner would be a really awesome character because his fighting style, his quirk, his weapons could make for a really interesting moveset that would be completely different from Stain, so he's not like an Echo Fighter or Stain. And I feel like he deserves to be in the game because he is a League of Villains member, and he's still a current League of Villains member, and I feel like he deserves a spot because of that, and it'd be pretty awesome to have like the whole League of Villains in the game. And that's why I think Spinner would be a really cool character, and that's why I think he deserves to be a character in the game. But if you guys would like to see a specific character in the series, let me know down in the comments below. I'd be happy to try to create a moveset for that character. And if you guys did enjoy, please like and subscribe. That would be amazing. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.